Okay, so our first speaker is Liam Renouf, and his presentation is entitled Relocate, Rearticulate, Reinterrogate, Co-creating Teaching and Learning with Young People with a Diagnosis of Autism. Make sure you're able to share whenever you're ready.
Mm. Cool. Can you see that?
Perfect. Yeah.
Great, great, fantastic. Um,
Oops.
yeah, can everyone see that?
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Liam.
Great, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Alison and Damien for inviting me. So my presentation is entitled Relocate, Rearticulate, Reinterrogate, Co-creating Teaching and Learning with Young Autistic People with a Label of Intellectual Disabilities. Oh. So a bit about me. So I'm a neurodivergent teacher working at the Bridge Integrated Learning Space in London, where I also take a lead on research coordination. So I'm just going to shrink this a little bit. My teaching practice is informed by a neurodiversity approach, and I deliver bespoke person-centered support guided by principles of unconditional positive regard and gentle teaching. In 2017, I completed a BA in social anthropology at Goldsmiths, and now I'm undertaking an MA in critical autism studies at Edge Hill with Allison. Um, so I want to start by talking about the equity model of SEND education. So does an equity model of SEND education still assume a correct way of being? And are we attempting to plug assumed deficits to fit into a world created by and for a predominant neurotype? So community participation, the community, everyone else, the homogenous, everyone else, the not them, all caps, not them, building reciprocal social communication and developing emotional regulation skills so they, all caps, they, kick off less, are often values at the foundations of special schools. The special school classroom adorned with slogans of acceptance. What makes you different makes you beautiful. Not a disability, a different ability. Being different makes you super special. Love, hope. Next, the large sign saying no kicking, no punching, good hands, good feet, and offering iPad time for star collection, sitting down, staying in class, stimming less, learning more. Normalization, accumulation. The drive is to bring them, all caps, them, closer to actual age and away from developmental age. The 18-year-old, we are told, with 18 years worth of experiences, has a developmental age of 12 months. Speech and language therapists, ed psychs, teachers, and social workers discuss reciprocal communication with little bits of plastic. Yes, you can have the Lego once you pass me that picture. They, all caps, they are doing so well. They, all caps, they are now a level 4B.2861AZ.68 in PECs. Let me write that down. Family life. What family life? We're here to ensure that they, all caps, they aren't a burden on their, all caps, their families. And God forbid, they, all caps, they, may hit, kick, bite, or scratch. Do that in a world created by and for predominant neurotype, in a busy classroom with staff talking about their weekend plans, who they fancy, football, affairs, divorces. God, we need a Christmas party having to deal with them, all caps, them all term. Fluorescent lighting, colourful walls, YouTube, big screen. Remember, sitting, waiting. Now is her turn. Next is your turn. It's all right. Just give them, all caps, them, the good hand social story. Home. Which home? The third place the local authority has moved them, all caps them, in a month. The hotel room whilst they, all caps they, wait for the never-ending council waiting list. But it's okay, we are told. We are achieving. One day they, all caps they, might work. Work, fantastic work. hobbies, relationships, sex. Nah, who cares? They, all caps, they are disabled. They're not interested in that. So I want to talk a little bit to start with about Bell Hook's work, Teaching to Transgress. So Hook states, as a classroom community, our capacity to generate excitement is deeply affected by our interest in one another, in hearing one another's voices, in recognizing one another's presence. Critical pedagogy is an approach to pedagogy that speaks to the lived experience of marginalized groups. The classroom is a political space where knowledge exchange is about lived experience. But what if the classroom is a space that does not favor normative modes of communication? How and what does a critical pedagogy look like? A classroom of people with a classroom of people who may hold a label of non-speaking, who perhaps decode, sort, and recode sensory stimuli in ways that are not easily translatable or even understandable to the teacher. Knowledge exchange in this way, listening, hearing, speaking, becomes about representation, something that is highly political and is shrouded with power imbalances. Autistic people in the deficit-based medical and pathological paradigm have been understood as machine-like and non-rhetorical, restricted, repetitive, and disordered. Intensive interaction may be the key to this and forms the underpinning of the philosophy of this classroom. Not an intensive interaction in the traditional sense that seeks to develop normative modes of communication, but rather one that's primary objective is to hear and to listen. What of communication not through traditional language, but rather through rhythm, breathing, and movement? To engage with sensory stimuli in a way that perhaps hears someone speak. The possibilities for critical pedagogy concerned with hearing someone has the potential to be, may have the potential to be disruptive, has the potential for the learner to become the teacher and the teacher to become the learner. Throughout my teaching career, I have learned the beauty of re-engaging differently with my sensory surroundings, to experience a feeling of cornflour in my hands, to hear as my voice is echoed off different parts of the wall, and to spend hours speaking, listening, and hearing without using a single word. And I think it's really important to kind of look at this end quote. So as Hook states, education is the practice of freedom. So these are Luke Bearden's three golden rules to autism education. And I'm going to read some direct quotes from Luke Bearden around these 3 points. So the first one is one that I use in my classroom all the time, and it's kind of, I think my team are probably sick of me saying it. Autism plus environment equals outcome. So the outcome might be positive or negative, but the person who is autistic remains the same. It's the environment that leads to the outcome. So if you want a successful outcome and you recognize the person with autism cannot change their brain, then the only thing that you can change is the environment. And that often, but not always, means the people within the environment. So the second one, what you put in needs to balance what you get out. If you're going to apply a way of engaging an autistic person, which is the same as you would for the rest of the non-autistic population, talking to them, teaching them, then the more success that has with non-autistic people, the less chance it will have of working with the autistic population. Basically, the traditional way will just not work. So as the opportunities of engagement framework came in 2021, I began to think about how we can create opportunities for dis/engagement. To dis/, I'm using it as a verb, is to enable a process of becoming, of dis/ruption, of boundless and endless potential. Goodley states that dis/ability studies acknowledges the theoretical, practical, and political work that takes place either side of the binary, a binary denoted by the presence of the slash. Dis/ability studies ask to consider the human and what kinds of societies are worth fighting for. It continues to say, one might suggest that many disabled people have been denied the opportunity to occupy the position of the modernist humanistic subject, bounded, rational, capable, responsible, and competent. But are any of us those things really? The model asks us to do two things. Firstly, participate in co-creation of teaching and learning with students. And secondly, to afford students the ability to, in short, rebel and to interrogate, to be the key agent in their own learning. It is designed to be a continuous process of locating an opportunity with dis/engagement, co-articulating that opportunity, and co-interrogating that opportunity. And I'm going to discuss this more as the presentation goes on. So, what is this and what isn't it? So it isn't designed to be a strict or defined intervention approach or guide. It is, in my kind of thinking, designed to be a dis/ruption, a way of thinking and a way of talking. And it's an attempt to unknow autism, and perhaps it sets out a possible anti-agenda. So there's a quote from Michael Orsini that I think is really imperative to kind of my thinking around this work. From his piece, Who Needs to Unknow on the Generative Possibilities of Ignorance for Autistic Futures. I'm just going to read this out. But what if knowledge is not the favored currency of exchange after all? What if an emerging feature of the critical politics of autism consists in expending considerable effort to strategically position the act of unknowing as both politically desirable and necessary for disability futures that can crip normative ideas of time? How can the failure to know be reimagined in a world awash in the science and fiction of autism, when all attention is focused on amassing knowledge or expanding the scope of available evidence, we fail to appreciate the need, the imperative in some cases, not to know. A commitment to undoing and unthinking harmful knowledge can embrace autistic failure on the basis that under certain circumstances, failing, losing, forgetting, unmaking, undoing, unbecoming, and not knowing may in fact offer more creative, more cooperative, more surprising ways of being in the world. Sorry. Yeah, I've included that one twice. I apologize. So my work is kind of centered around or I think through am I still sharing?
Yeah,
Still
yes,
sharing?
all clear. Yeah.
So my work is kind of uses the thinking of Deleuze and Guattari. So Deleuze was a philosopher, Gilles Deleuze, and Felix Guattari was a psychoanalyst. And they started writing together in 1968 and were really informed by the Parisian uprisings and the Algerian Revolution. Um, they produced their most famous work was considered two books under the title Anti-Oedipus. The first was Capitalism and Schizophrenia. And that's kind of where I get a lot of my thinking from. And the second was A Thousand Plateaus. And they developed the term schizoanalysis to really kind of it's kind of designed to be kind of a discursive critique of capitalist normalization. So there are three terms that I'm going to be using. So the first is a rhizome, and that's a nonlinear network that connects any point to another point. An assemblage, which is the process of organizing and fitting together heterogeneous elements to form a socio-spatial relation. And lines of flight, a space between assemblages, the construction of different connections of assemblages. So this sort of made me think about the dis/assemblage, which was used in by Goodley in the article that I was talking about earlier. So the assemblage, the process of organizing and fitting together heterogeneous elements to form a socio-spatial relation, has been utilized by Goodley and Runswick Cole to discuss the possibility of a dis/assemblage. A dis/assemblage, they state, acknowledges the possibilities offered by disability to trouble, reshape, and refashion the human, whilst at the same time asserting disabled people's desires. The dis/assemblage has the capacity to conceptualize a collective humanness that does not privilege the individual, but rather just understands the individual as an assemblage of other parts. Most importantly, it does not favor independence as centric for dignity and worth, but rather captures activists to claim their humanity, we are people first, whilst also modeling new forms of interdependent politics and advocacy, we are assemblage first. A dis/assemblage approach to teaching has possible emancipatory capabilities for both teachers and students alike. It sees the connections between people as a possible site for pedagogical richness, asking us, what does it mean for each part of the assemblage to listen, to hear, to act, and to react? How do we hold space within the assemblage for different ways of being? And how can the dis/assemblage begin to question the dynamics of the special school classroom? How can the dis/assemblage begin to co-produce, co-articulate, and co-learn opportunities for dis/engagement? The diagram is clunky, I must admit, but imagine the dis/assemblage shifting and changing in real time. The built environment may change, the people may change, experience of race, of family, of gender may change within different spaces and within different people, even in different times. I think adolescence is a really key example to this. So that that kind of made me think about the rhizomatic educational theory. So rhizomatic educational theory utilizes the Deleuzian idea of a rhizome. A rhizomatic plant, which you can see on the right, has no center and defined boundary, but is made up of a number of semi-independent nodes, with each node being able to spread on its own, bounded only by its habitat. Think about Bearden's first rule, autism plus environment equals outcome. In rhizomatic educational theory, there is no canon of which to compare knowledge to. So that's really important, I think, for the special school classroom. What we're thinking about with rhizomatic educational theory is not how can we move over to a normative idea of development, but it sees knowledge as a process of negotiation. In our settings, knowledge isn't handwriting, maths, or sitting still. Knowledge is negotiated between people, practitioners and students, and vice versa. In rhizomatic educational theory, the student, their interests, their life worlds can be and should be the curriculum. Education becomes about any material that is emerging, and education is happening live and is shifting, evolving, and always changing. Knowledge production is about collaboration. The goals are mutable and the premises are constantly negotiated. The process of education, rather than just the outcome, becomes the important bit. So education, like I say, can be shaped in real time around a person, their emerging needs. It can shift and change. Perhaps a lesson that was imagined at the start is quite different at the end. Perhaps the teacher and the learner has discovered new things about each other that they did not imagine before, or perhaps the roles have entirely shifted. So this is kind of the best way that I could illustrate what my brain looked like when I was thinking about these things. So here's an illustration of a rhizomatic lesson in progress. The disassemblage moving through the relocate, rearticulate, reinterrogate line of flight towards the next assemblage. Each with their own intensity, rhythm, and language. Unbounded, never finished, always becoming. As the nodes connect to other nodes, each with their own assemblage, there is a multiplicity of possible teaching and learning experiences. These are being shaped in real time by the disassemblage. There are opportunities for each person in the disassemblage to teach and to learn, and for new opportunities for disengagement to grow. The learning is located by each party, articulated by each party, and interrogated by each party. And out of that interrogation, new nodes grow, they form, and the process continues. To return back to the discussion of attentive interaction, what if the spitting on the floor becomes an opportunity for us to dis/engage with the spit, to learn about it and to play with it with our students? What if the spit holds potential importance that we had not considered? what if it doesn't? What if it's just spit? I think that's also okay. What if we start a cooking lesson, but the learning becomes located in sensorial experiences of the ingredients? When pushing it away altogether, or the person decides to leave the classroom and enter a different space. By not being bound to the equity model of STEM education, or the teacher concerned with moving the young person towards a more normative developmental age, being bound by the strict models, interventions, and practices of STEM education, PECS, teach, or even the dreaded ABA. Both parties have the opportunity to grow, to learn, and to teach, with boundless opportunities of disengagement. So, in conclusion, the equity model of STEM education is often based in a deficit understanding of autism. The classroom is a highly political space where knowledge imparted onto others is historically and politically contingent. A rhizomatic educational model may offer the ability to disrupt dominant understandings of knowledge and may give space to hear one another's voices. The dominant hierarchy of teacher and student may affect the emergence of possible ways of being. And I wanted to end on this quote, so I think it's really, really important. It's one that I always go back to. Emancipatory politics must always destroy the appearance of a natural order. It must reveal what is presented as necessary and inevitable to be a mere contingency, just as it must make what was previously deemed to be impossible seem attainable. Thank
Thank,
you.
thank you, Liam. Thank you so much for a really interesting, thought-provoking presentation. There are lots of comments coming through, and there is one question. Well, Damien may need to help me keep an eye on chat as things are coming through quite fast. The first question that I spotted was from, I think, Holly, and apologies to attendees if I miss your name off, but so this is Holly says, I can't imagine the conversations that you have in the staff room, but are your colleagues on a similar journey with you in terms of the kind of critical theory and practice?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Not all my colleagues, of course. I think it's something that I kind of talk about a lot. I don't think you have to have read Deleuze and Guattari to kind of think about what perhaps I'm saying. Um, but I do work in a very, very special place, with very, very, very special and amazing colleagues. I think some of them are here at the moment. But definitely that is kind of the reflection that we will often have together takes that kind of form, of trying to really think about in a really individual way how we can always be locating that learning, how we can often become the student and the student can become the teacher. Sometimes we're really bad teachers, sometimes our students are really bad teachers. But yeah, I think that those sort of questions are always asked.
Um, I, because I know what an amazing place you work, and I've had the privilege of meeting some of your colleagues who are similarly amazing. But what happens when sort of external bodies like Ofsted get involved with you? Are you still able to maintain that level of criticality?
Yeah, I think we are to quite a large extent, actually. I think because of kind of the way that we work, um, some people will come in and be like, "What can you explain what I'm looking at?" You know, because it is quite different, I think, to most other special school settings. I really hate that term. Um, but yeah, I think that we can hold it a lot of the time. I think a lot of the tension comes with kind of the multidisciplinary discussions with other professionals. And they can become quite um yeah, they can become quite difficult. I think that's where it mostly sits.
Um, um,
quick comment. Just to say I really enjoyed the presentation, Liam. And I've done some work in the past myself around sort of rhizomes and uh, some of the influences there. I've put some of the links in the chat so you can look back over them. And some quotes and links to research you might find useful, that kind of stuff. Because some of this stuff's been influential on my own way of thinking, and the whole sort of rhizomatic principles were influential on how PARC was envisaged, and so tonight and stuff. And so it's really interesting to see it in a kind of school education context and so on. And the critique of equity and SEND and how you started, I thought that was very powerful as well. So I just really enjoyed it.
Thank you.